It's tempting to imagine that when you're giving something away, people will simply be grateful, and your motives will be above suspicion. It was a trap that one of the nation's big chocolate makers fell into when it launched a scheme that it thought would be seen as a great way of making children fit and healthy. But instead of being praised for persuading Britain's kids to do more sport, Cadbury was suspected of persuading Britain's kids to eat more sweets. And the bitter backlash left chocolate chiefs and government ministers in a very sticky situation.
Doctors and psychologists are meeting today to discuss an alarming increase in childhood obesity.
10 years old and 12.5 stone.
It's youngsters that are especially vulnerable.
I think the early 2000s can be characterised as this country suddenly being aware that we were heading towards an obesity crisis.
Childhood obesity has doubled in the last 20 years.
And the government were beginning to realise that they had a role to play in that.
You're really going to take action on obesity?
What I can do is encourage, for example, sport in schools. We can try and get the food industry and others to behave responsibly.
Most of the food industry, we're getting, I think, increasingly worried that governments might start regulating, and in the States you've got people starting to sue them for making them ill.
Manufacturers of fattening foods found themselves under pressure to do the right thing.
Consumers engage far better with products, services, companies, brands that do good. This is not charity or altruism, this is just good business.
There are many different ways in which a company can be a good corporate citizen. But of course, the thing that really matters is that it's a substantial thing. It's grounded in reality and not just a PR campaign.
Some food companies can act responsibly by making their products a little bit healthier, offering options with low fat, salt or sugar.
If you're Cadbury's, there's a bit of a snag. You specialise in high-fat, high-sugar foods if you're a confectionery and chocolate manufacturer, so there's not a lot of wiggle room for actually reformulating your product and changing it.
Cadbury would have to find a different way of helping the nation's health drive. Minister for Sport, Richard Cabourn, stepped up the pressure.
The obesity debate was really starting to rage, and they were seen as a major cause of obesity. And therefore I made it very clear as a minister that I wanted to engage the confectionery industry to both change culture and get the nation more active.
Cadbury could reach a target population in sort of children from 9 through to 15, 16, who weren't going to listen to the government and weren't probably going to listen to their parents, but might get engaged with something that the producer of their favourite treat got involved with.
The deal that Cadbury's put on the table, broadly speaking, was for every £8 that was spent on their chocolates, that could be exchanged for £1 worth of sports equipment in clubs and schools up and down this country by exchanging wrappers on their confectionery. The only thing that government gave to them was an endorsement from a minister.
Cadbury's offer would also include nutritional training and teaching materials. Before long, more than 4,000 schools were signing up to take part.
That was a no-brainer. Everybody said, great, because you're not encouraging people to eat more, you're encouraging them to use their current consumption to get more active, to work off more calories. So I don't think we set about thinking we were buying influence. I don't think we needed to. I think we felt we were just being a good citizen.
I think the advantages for Cadbury was it ticked several boxes for them. Not only could they get the corporate social responsibility of being associated with helping to solve the obesity crisis through sports equipment, but they could also sell more chocolate at the same time.
It seemed a win-win situation for Cadbury. The company prided itself on its long-standing reputation for looking beyond profits and supporting the community, and the new campaign would follow in that tradition. In spring 2003, its chocolate factories began churning out the 160 million bars with collectible Get Active coupons on the packaging. But in the excitement, Cadbury had failed to calculate how some simple schoolboy sums could entirely wreck its plans.
before the launch of the Cadbury's Get Active campaign, we were lucky enough to get hold of the full list of what you would need to do to get the sports equipment. So the number of tokens that would need to be collected and which sports equipment that could be swapped for. And we just looked at that and said that is vast amounts of chocolate.
The Food Commission revealed some eye-opening figures. For just one basketball, you needed vouchers from 170 chocolate bars. A child who actually ate that much chocolate would need to play basketball for 90 solid hours to burn off the calories. If you wanted to receive a cricket set, it would take 2,730 bars. And to get a volleyball set, that would take a whopping 5,440 bars of chocolate. The story was far too delicious for hungry journalists to resist.
Teachers and health groups have criticised Cadbury's.
Cadbury's is being criticised for
encouraging children to overindulge.
Tonight of encouraging unhealthy eating. Children to stuff themselves with sweets.
This is a disaster.
It's not something that we want to promote.
What happened when the scheme launched was, and I think it was either second or third item on the news, that Cadbury's had launched this terrible scheme across the whole of the nation that was going to get every school kid a beast in about a month.
It could leave you parting with your pounds and piling them on at the same time.
We were in shock. There was this awful, awful story questioning the core of our values, our motivations, our intentions.
I think it's a bad idea because the company only care about selling the chocolate and getting the money.
That we were ramming chocolate bars down the mouths of unsuspecting babes and innocents.
And they don't care about the people who get fat.
And, you know, it was a corker.
Personally, it's just a gimmick.
Cadbury's strategy was rebounding.
This was a major own goal. It was catastrophic in terms of public relations, but they actually just put themselves really firmly in the spotlight as part of a problem.
The association between chocolate and obesity was too close to connect, and so therefore actually reminded people of the very thing that you were trying to help.
The idea that you are encouraging children to eat 36 billion calories of chocolate in order to get thin is daft.
We never believed one child would actually buy all the chocolate to actually be able to purchase one piece of equipment. It was about the community, it was about all the families, it was about all the school, but that was distorted, and unfortunately that set the news agenda.
Cadbury briefly attempted to fight back.
95% of the population eat chocolate on a regular basis. It's just taking those wrappers and doing something with them.
We dug the bunker and we sort of chucked grenades at people for a while and tried to defend our position. I mean, ultimately unsustainable. And probably the best thing to do would have been to have got out with dignity more quickly than we did.
In December 2003, 8 months after it launched, Cadbury quietly ended the promotion.
There's a sort of blindness as well, isn't there? I mean, the idea that if you sell chocolate, you should be associating yourselves with sports in schools. I mean, it's astonishing that they thought it was a good idea.
We were naive. We didn't understand politics and the media. We didn't really understand public affairs and public relations, and it blew up in our faces.
The bad reactions were particularly hard for Cadbury to swallow. Some companies see their goal as making money. Others, like Cadbury, like to think of themselves as having a higher purpose, as serving society. The problem comes when you mix the two, because people inevitably ask, is this charity or naked self-interest? You see, business works best when there's a complete clarity of objectives, when everyone knows who's up to what and who stands to gain from it.
Authenticity is absolutely critical. And this wasn't authentic in the sense that if they'd just given you the sports equipment, putting it extremely crudely, it would have been better. What they sought to do was give it to you, and then in order for you to get it, you had to buy more of the stuff.
And of course, newspapers are cynical towards brands getting involved with promotions, you know, by the back door. And I think that was part of the issue with this, that the newspapers actually didn't buy in to Cadbury's, they didn't buy into the idea, and they had someone here, you know, rattling the bars of the story.
The Cadbury team had been so wrapped up in what they assumed was a great idea, they hadn't fully considered the worst-case scenario.
I think it taught me one really big lesson, which is if you're going to do something new, bring in some of your biggest critics to look at it before you do it. We should have gone out to 4 cynical journalists and actually said, we're going to do this. Would you write the worst headline you could possibly develop for us if it all went horribly wrong?
Like Cadbury, other major food companies have found their motives under scrutiny. Kellogg's was criticised for an ad that focused on how cereal could help resolve obesity and bullying. And when Kentucky Fried Chicken in America ran a promotion involving donations to a breast cancer charity, critics wondered whether it really was an appropriate campaign for a fast food chain. As for Cadbury, it hasn't given up on sport. Recent campaigns highlighted sponsorship of next year's Olympics. But this time, you don't have to buy chocolate to take part.